From left-wing politicians to big tech billionaires, the party of inclusion and forward thinking really wants to shut you up.
You know, social media, we're still arguing about, hey, we shouldn't have let young kids use it as much. Right. And how do you balance free speech and versus crazy stuff that, you know, got people not to take vaccines, for example.
Right.
Here now live in the studio, the author of Truth, the Future of America First, the former 2024 GOP presidential candidate, the one, the only, Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
It's good to see you guys.
I got to tell you, and I know you talk about this a lot, but I mean, that you have such powerful players that are working so hard, fighting so hard, advocating with such ferocity to silence people's viewpoint because they don't like it. Well,
the reality is they're afraid of the voters. And this is why we fought an American Revolution in 1776, actually, to make sure the people we elect to run the government are the ones who run the government. And right now, I mean, I don't think anybody in America believes that Joe Biden is even running, as President of the United States, is really running the country. The reality is it's unelected bureaucrats in this managerial class of the deep state. They're the ones pulling the strings. They're the ones who are also very critical of voters having full access to the information they need to make decisions. It's a big part of why I wrote this book as well, is to expose what's true. It's so much harder to access truth today, ironically, in an era of digital freedom, supposedly, than it was even 30 years ago. And I think that's interesting.
Because if you silence people, you can control them.
That's
and
right.
If Kamala Harris were to be elected president, she would just keep this whole sham going. I mean, she really wouldn't be president either.
She's the embodiment of this. And many people think of Kamala as an ideologue. I actually think that's giving her too much credit. I don't think she's ideological. She's just another cog in that machine.
Yeah.
In the same way Biden's cognitive deficits, they're not a bug, but they're a feature for the people who control him. The same thing go for her policy deficits now. So I think that when we think about this as just Republicans versus Democrats ideologically, we miss the point. I think it is this deeper managerial machine. And we got to go in and dismantle that machine.
And this is the problem. Those who run the government, just to your point, use a Kamala Harris or a Joe Biden as a vehicle for them to implement their ideas and their agenda. They don't like Donald Trump because actually Donald Trump will be the president. Donald Trump will run the administration. They're like, whoa, you're going to disenfranchise us? I thought we run the government.
That's right.
And he'll be like, no, I won the election. I'm going to run this government, which is why I think they hate him so much. But I want to have time to get to this because you just came out with your new book called Truths, The Future of America First, and a Fox Nation special to go along with it. Let's take a look at the Nation special, and then we'll come back.
What do you think is one of our main learnings as we think about this question of who are we, national identity? What does that say about where we are today?
I think there are people who, after Donald Trump got elected, for them, suddenly the issue of government interference in the speech landscape. Once upon a time, we had confidence in the public and in audiences to make the right decisions if they were well informed. Now, people believe that the voting public can't be left to their own devices, that they have to be manipulated and managed. Therefore, we can tolerate a certain amount of censorship.
So, Vivek, this book, your book Truths, comes out tomorrow, The Future of America First. What is the future of America First?
So the future of America First is very much being determined. It's about American excellence. We've lost the culture of pursuing excellence in this country, and I think this culture of victimhood has replaced it. So one of the things I make the case for the future of our conservative movement is we don't want to replace the left-wing nanny state with the right-wing nanny state. We want to go in there and actually shut it down. To this point about the bureaucracy we were just talking about, there's an essential chapter in this book. I think probably the most important chapter in this book talks about the nature of that bureaucracy. There's a right-wing temptation to say, hey, we want to go replace those left-wing regulations with right-wing regulations. No, the right answer, I believe, is to get in there and shut it down. That's part of the case I make in this book. And I'm worried. We in 2022 did not have that red wave that was promised. Right. I see a real risk that the same thing could happen in 2024 unless we wake up as conservatives and say, this is not just what we're against, but here's what we actually stand for. We're not just running from something, we're running to something. That's what this book is really about. And one of the things we did with this Fox Nation special, I hope a lot of people do go to Fox Nation and check it out, is we brought together people with really diverse views around the dinner table. A couple of people from the Obama administration, one from the Energy Department, one from the Obama transition, a Muslim observant woman from the Biden administration at the same table as a Jewish rabbi, a journalist who lived in Russia for 10 years, and then somebody who's a Russian immigrant, debating issues like Russia-Ukraine or Israel-Hamas. We don't have those conversations at the dinner table anymore.
No.
And the thing I want to do with this book is not just reach the people who agree with us, but actually give us the toolkit for the people who do agree to have their own dinner table conversations with their friends on the left. And so that's why I wrote it.
One of the reasons I think we're not having those conversations and that kind of debate is because of the role that big tech plays in this
Yes.
too. When we think about the bureaucracy that you're talking about, it's very powerful.
Yep.
But these companies are also, they wield enormous amounts of power. How do you deal with them?
Yeah, so I actually think a lot of the suppression we've seen is not really the big tech companies making those decisions anyway. We now know this to be a fact. It's big government telling big tech to do through the back door what the government could not censor through the front door under the Constitution. That's really what's going on. And it's not just in the United States. You have Brazil banning X. You have Western Europe taking action against social media companies. So that's a real threat. But that's not just the government's job. That only works if you have a culture and a population willing to buy what they're selling, willing to bend the knee.
To accept it.
To accept it.
That's
and so that revolution doesn't just start with fixing the government. That's half the battle. But part of this starts with a culture that demands the truth.
Which is in the school
And that's what we
system.
want to do.
You got to teach your kids how important free speech is and why you have that right.
That's right.
We don't teach them that anymore. We don't have enough time to do this, but how you shut down the deep state is a critical conversation. I was there for 9 years. It's really hard, but we have to think through how we do it.
It's the most important chapter in this book, and I hope people are able to check it out.
I can't wait to read it.
We're taking
Vivek
it home.
Ramaswamy, thank you for being with us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you,
See ya.
guys. Good to see you.